So Sam, first of all, welcome.
Thank you.
How is shelter in place treating you, sir?
Going pretty good. Laura and I only talk about housing and that's it. Then we just stare at each other in the abyss. But I guess that's not really different than it used to be anyway. So that's not much different. But no, it's been cool. I mean, scary and I'm really lucky. Mission Housing, we are deemed an essential service for what we do provide as we should be. The staff at Mission Housing has been really great. It's taking care of business, and I am lucky to have that. So, all in all, we're trudging on.
Cool. And Sam, it looks like your father just joined. So
Hey, Dad.
you told me you didn't want him on there. Do you want me to kick him out, or you're all
No,
right?
it's fine.
You're fine. All right. All right. Just want to
I'm
make
bringing my
sure.
mother. He's bringing his mother too. Goodbye.
Oh,
I'm
great.
being on mute now.
Oh,
All right.
great.
Well, at least there are two people we know who will like
I'm
what
sure
Sam.
most other executive directors have their
That's
parents.
right.
So
That's right. Hey Sam, so could you just kind of like go through the day, like a day right now in the life of Mission Housing, right? Like what does the day-to-day operations of the organization look like since kind of
Hello, testing, testing, testing.
we can hear you.
we can hear you?
So, the day-to-day operations of Mission Housing are they
Hello.
they are certainly they're modified to say the least, but all in all, like, we are providing all of the same resident and most of the same community services that we did. So a lot of the day-to-day stuff is involved with our staff working together and working with tenants to not only provide the services that they need, but also to do so in like a safe and healthy of a way to respect social distancing rules and just to keep everyone safe. And so the last couple of months, there has been a lot of learning about that, best practices. A lot of the day is spent working with city agencies and other nonprofits to, very neighborhood-based stuff to try to serve the mission and the rest of our tenants as much as we can. And then on the development side, on the construction side, our new construction especially is still going forward. 490 South Van Ness and 1950 Mission are, they're topped out and they're a lot closer to being finished than not. And so I really do also really want to commend not just our development staff and our asset management accounting staff, but the contractors that have been working on these properties. From the day the shelter in place order was submitted, they've done nothing but be like uber perfect. Swinnerton and Nibby Brothers, especially, that we've been working with on these big construction contracts. The safety plans that they've had put in place have just been amazing. And so it's, a lot of the stuff is based on safety, but it's at the end of the day with a focus on keeping the train rolling.
Well, and Sam, has there been have you found that your residents, are there additional services that Mission Housing has needed to provide during the shelter in place that just you hadn't done in the past?
I mean, certainly when it comes to locating safety precautions, things like that. I mean, we've always done whatever we needed to do for the tenants. While this might be a more focused situation in terms of health and social distancing, and we've always kind of tried to tailor all of our services to each individual population. And so to that end, we are built and ready for this. But things like food pantry, we provide that like we do now, and it took a couple weeks to not only literally just to find the safety materials, the masks and gloves. Once we found, so it took about 2 weeks, and once we found them, though, I mean, we have figured out ways to carry on with these very, very vital services. I think right now, one thing that we're doing that maybe Mission hasn't done as much in the past is we're really working in strong concert with Mission Neighborhood Health Center to provide testing, throughout the mission, especially in our SROs, but to do it in a socially distanced, safe way so that, we're not making the matter worse. But we right now, I will say, it now more than ever, Mission Housing, being partners with all these other nonprofits in the mission, especially, and all of us working together, it's been a rare kind of good thing of late, because the mission really is kind of coming together to do what all of us were created to do in the first place, which is support the neighborhood.
Cool. That's great, Sam. So, one of the things that we've been talking about the Housing Action Coalition, and I'm sure, we're not unique in kind of thinking about this, right? The problems pre-existed, like the housing crisis pre-existed, shelter in place and kind of the coronavirus. But perhaps the coronavirus has really brought a lot of these inequities that we kind of have talked about in the housing world to to the fore, right, to the forefront. Like people, it's on the top of people's mind. So one of the things that we're really kind of kicking around at the local level, the state level, and quite frankly at the federal level is like, what is possible to get done today that wasn't possible to get done 90 days ago?
Yeah.
Or maybe now 100 days ago, right, as we kind of get further. And I'm just wondering, like, what opportunities do you see, if any, that, maybe where we, for those of us who are really in the housing world, we've always like, yeah, we should be doing that, but there hasn't necessarily been the political desire or will to do. Do you see some opportunities right now?
I think first and foremost, affordable housing is deemed an essential action, right, under any shelter in place. And so especially the construction of new affordable housing. And say whatever you will, regardless of your political, weighings, like we were in a major construction labor shortage crisis well before COVID hit. And, I hate that there's been construction industry projects that have stopped, but they have. And we don't know when they're going to come back. And I think an opportunity might be in that maybe we could jumpstart a few projects that, cities, especially in the county, I believe that I think cities do have plans for affordable housing that I don't think they ever planned on maybe having to build, but they had to make the plans thanks to the, Housing Accountability Act. And I think that, I think working with the construction industry more than anything to talk to them about what the cost per hour needs to be for affordable housing, and maybe how do we get more people back to work, but also sign agreements to, guarantee that it's union, signing project labor agreements, but maybe at a reduced hourly rate. I think that there's an opportunity here to make sure that the union construction industry keeps going strong and we get more affordable housing built.
So Sam, are you referring, I know there's been talk right through the years about the real possibility of kind of like a residential wage.
Mm-hmm.
That's what.
Yeah, I think, sure. Yeah, and there are different wages, and I'm not saying that. And I'm also not suggesting that we shouldn't pay union wages when the wages are what they are. But the fact of the matter is that we have a very finite amount of money because of the lovely thing that is Prop 13. Thank you, everyone. Thanks. I'm not going to say what generation I blame for that, mom and dad. But, I think that we have a finite amount of money, but we do have money in California. We are still the 5th biggest economy in the world. And knowing that it's finite and knowing that the rest of the country is now really, the thing about money and affordable housing is the rest of the country for the first time ever is really kind of competing with New York and California for affordable housing dollars, and like, I hate to say it, but like mainly because middle-class white people are finally being affected by the housing crisis, and it sucks. And I think there's people that have been affected for a lot longer, but it is what it is. And so the money is finite, but we do have a lot of it. And I think that it would be great if we could kind of come together on an affordable housing wage that ensures that it's built by union leaders, but also that we can get as much out of those dollars. And I think now is just a really unique opportunity for that.
So kind of building on that a little bit, Sam, I've heard you speak through the years about kind of the multiplying effect that affordable housing has in the economy, right? Like, I'm sure everyone who's tuned in to this webinar is aware that, the unemployment numbers today, basically 15%, right, of the country is filed for first-time unemployment over the last whatever number of weeks, and the ongoing numbers are even higher, right? Where the only thing that's been in a worse situation was during the Great Depression, where we were at 25% unemployment. So we're looking for, right, like, what are ways that we can get out of it, right? Help the economy. So, and I know that you're a big believer that affordable housing is one of the ways to do that. So preach, like, what is your, how do you see this, Sam? Yeah.
Besides the amount of money, affordable housing is built at, union wages. It's not, one thing that I love to debunk is like affordable housing is not cheap housing. And, so on the front end, the construction, the amount of jobs that it creates is gigantic. You know, these are large $100 million projects, and they put a lot of construction and other service and labor workers to work. But after that, you know, we really like call on every affordable housing project, every development itself. I always say that we call on it to solve all the ills of the world with every project. And what I mean by that is that we don't just build housing, right? We don't just like build a unit and put people in it. We also build these vast ground floor spaces that provide, you know, nonprofit office rentals. We do retail, you know, community serving retail spaces, but we also do health centers, and, you know, we have after school care, we have daycare, we have tutoring, we have a lot of Head Start and early Head Start programs, and mission housing. You know, we fiscally sponsored and help incubate Dev Mission, which is a coding boot camp and is run out of the free computer lab for the whole neighborhood at Valencia Gardens. And these are just a myriad of examples, but like each one of those things has a beneficial economic wise out towards the neighborhood. There's services that are provided to the neighborhood that help with economics, whether it's having a grocery store or a daycare center. And so we are able to build these facilities at a much reduced rate because we're also building these giant apartment buildings on top of them. And so it's really not that much more money to build the spaces where, you know, not for nothing, the neoliberal bringer of death that I am, I guess, like I do believe in the public-private partnerships, but the government would spend a lot more per square foot if they just built a health center or if they just built a daycare center. It wouldn't be utilizing the very precious land that we have as much as we could. And so by spending the money now and building these facilities, you're really getting a huge discount on the office space and the retail space and the daycare space, places for food pantry that you wouldn't be getting otherwise. So you're kind of playing with house money. And we know, you don't have to go much further than any couple blocks in the Mission to see the economic benefits of a well-run ground floor with affordable housing above it.
Cool. So I'm just going to push pause because a bunch of new people I saw have joined since we welcomed everyone. So I'm just going to take a minute and welcome everyone again. I'm Todd David, the Executive Director of the Housing Action Coalition, here with Sam Moss, the Executive Director of Mission Housing. And we want to welcome everyone for spending their Friday afternoon happy hour, listening to Sam teach us about affordable housing. I saw that my parents actually joined the call from New Jersey. So if we can get them to sit next to your parents, that would be just ideal.
Such good Jewish sons.
That's right. That's right. The Menches, they wanted to watch the Menches speak to each other. And just so everyone knows, people are doing it, but just so in case people are not aware, if you do have a question, please type it into the chat box at the bottom of the Zoom screen, and then staff will go through the questions, and we'll get to the questions, after Sam's done telling us everything he needs to tell us. Hey, Sam, so you are part of a team that has, a pretty significant project, the Balboa Reservoir. And I think it'd be great to just kind of give everyone kind of an update as to what's going on. But also, I do think that the Balboa Reservoir is really interesting in the sense that, right, it's a 50% affordable project. Yep. And for some people, that's not enough, that they want it to be 100, right? So I'm just kind of like, so update on the Balboa Reservoir. And actually a friend of mine who's running for Board of Education was interviewed today by the Teachers Union, and they specifically asked her about the Balboa Reservoir and why is only 50% affordable acceptable on that site. So anyway, Sam, please go.
Yeah, so I mean, look, I too would love a unicorn for Hanukkah, but like the thing is that we are building, about 1,100 units at the Balboa Reservoir. So first of all, Balboa Reservoir has made it a little bit farther than any other developer so far. This is the third time that someone's tried to develop on the reservoir in the last 30 some odd years. We are now waiting for the EIR to essentially be reviewed and approved, which is great. You know, we hope that it happens sometime in May, but you know, it's moving forward, and so it is a 50% affordable. It is truly 50% affordable. So Avalon, Bay, and Bridge Housing are the co-master developers. It's a 17-acre parking lot that has never actually reserved one drop of water in its career. So it's not much of an actual reservoir, but we're the co-developers for the affordable portion. So we'll be responsible for about 550 100% affordable units. There will be over 130 of them will be first and foremost dedicated to City College, to teachers and workers. And, you know, it's really the first actually true 50% affordable development of this size in San Francisco. And what's really important is that Avalon Bay, the market rate developer, is paying for 33% of that. So that's a lot. That's a lot of units. You know, that's hundreds of units. And these are all family units. So I really want to stress that each unit is a 2 or 3, you know, there's 1 bedrooms also, but there's just a ton of 2 and 3 bedrooms. So we're talking about thousands and thousands of humans that will have a really high quality place to live. And this is just the affordable portion. And the market rate will be great also. And so because the developer is paying for 33% of the project, what the city has enough money for, because the city has a ton of other projects. I have to say that the affordable housing industry in San Francisco constantly amazes me at the amount of, you know, of what we're able to do with, I know it seems like an insane amount of money, but we really do stretch it. And so thousands of units are being built all over the city, and if they wouldn't be, if it weren't for the mayor's office of housing. And so they can afford the other 17%, so which gets us to the 50%. So, you know, they can afford, you know, 180 or some odd units, and that would be great. But instead we're getting, you know, 550 units, and there'll be a 4 acre or 2.5 acre park in the middle of the complex. It's being built for pedestrian use and bike use. It's being built, there will be parking, you know, we are working on replacing the parking, don't worry. And that is in the plan. But it will be a large development that is built to focus on encouraging public transit and encouraging, you know, non-car travel. But we won't have any, we're not having commercial retail on there, right? Because we designed it so people could enter and exit from Ocean Avenue, so that the Ocean merchants have this now thousands of people who move next door, and we can help build a vibrant neighborhood. Not that it isn't already. And so, you know, the update is that it's been going well. I have to say, I really want to thank YIMBY Action and the San Francisco Housing Action Coalition. The organizing that y'all have done at these public hearings, at planning, and my favorite, the San Francisco City College Board of Trustees Subcommittee for Land Use and Facilities. It was an awesome meeting. It's been great. People have been showing up and really supporting, and it's working. It's helping. Politicians, neighborhood leaders that maybe wrote off the reservoir because it was easy before, like, are definitely starting to come around. And, you know, like I said, we are moving forward. We're having a lot of support. And so, you know, it feels kind of like a critical mass for the project. And we also we're really lucky in the sense that we have a kind of a dedicated city staff, you know, the new director of Mayor's Office of Housing, new director of planning, the mayor herself, Mayor Breed, is clearly of the most pro-housing mayors that we've, you know, ever enjoyed. And her dedication to the affordable housing industry is truly great. It's kind of like this perfect storm of now we also have people who think we should have housing somewhere that isn't a redlined Eastern neighborhood. And, you know, we're really hopeful. Of course, you know, would I love it if it was, you know, 10,000 units or some ridiculous number? Of course. But 1,100 units is like 3 times the density of the last application. And it's a very dense development in a neighborhood that really is just kind of welcoming density for the first time. And I'm not trying to make excuses. There are many reasons for that. But, you know, I've just been really proud. I've been very proud to be a developer of the reservoir. It's going to be really awesome to have a Mission Housing footing out there, and we plan to grow that in the years. But from the housing advocacy side, I just have been really proud to be a part of both organizations, because we would be nowhere near here without the organizing that's done. So thank you. Cheers to all of you. Appreciate it.
No. I mean, lots of people on this call have been the people who have showed up for those meetings. So,
Which means that you've already heard me say all this at Club 93, but thanks for signing on anyway. I appreciate it.
So Sam, I also think that, for maybe people who are kind of newer to the conversation should probably, kind of get some kind of, equal level of information out there. So I'm just going to give you a hypothetical. So hypothetically, in San Francisco, if it costs $850,000 to build a market rate unit of housing, what does it cost to build an affordable unit of housing?
Well, the number is still $850,000, but
wait, are you saying that it costs the same to build an affordable housing unit as it does a market rate housing unit?
Yeah, I'm saying that the number that's reported is certainly the same. Yes, but the difference is that we build the housing unit and we build all of the stuff that's on the ground floor that I mentioned earlier, and it comes out to $850,000. So, God bless the NEMA, but I'm pretty sure there isn't after school childcare being flung about at the market. You know what I mean?
If you know who to tip, you can get after school childcare there. That's not,
no, it's the same. We don't affordable housing, if anything, I'm not saying that I want.
Right. The only thing affordable about affordable housing is the rent.
What we pay to live.
Yeah,
no, it's true. It's very true. That is a self-inflicted wound, though. That's not because the laws of physics demand it. But we can get into that all we want. But we really do. If anything, if you think about it, the affordable housing industry, we're always apologizing for the projects, right? Like the Geneva Towers or the old Valencia Gardens. We're always apologizing for that. And why did those buildings end up doing like that? Why did we just abandon an entire part of our society and just, and it was because it was cheap housing. It was poorly built and cheaply built, and it was never run correctly. It never had enough money to run it. And so with these affordable housing developments that we build, if anything, we should probably be why aren't we spending more than market rate housing? Because like I said, we are called upon to solve all the ills of the world at every building. But the thing is when we do that, the amount of money that the city pays for first responding, for emergency care, for policemen, for firemen, for DPW, for cleaning up things, and the amount of money that's spent on that drastically plummets, because a lot of it is spent in some, connection to the low income community. And there's a lot of racial and economic and equity issues that go into that. But for whatever reason, so all of that money does come down. So I think we should spend more, to be frank.
So Sam, I think that one of the things that people miss is all of the wraparound services that come with a 100% affordable housing project, right? So there tends to be, at least amongst a certain group of people in San Francisco, being no, all affordable housing needs to be inclusionary as part, a mixed income, or there's equity issues. But could you talk about what are the services that are provided at a 100% affordable housing project, as opposed to services that are provided when people are building their affordable housing on site as part of a market rate unit?
So first off, when an affordable unit is built on site at a market rate unit building, that we refer to that as on-site BMR, below market rate. My industry loves its acronyms, and we love that you all don't know our acronyms, because it makes us seem superior. It makes us be superior. We're superior. I'm sorry.
You are superior.
We are. So affordable housing, capital A, capital H, affordable housing, that's what Mission Housing does. 100% affordable housing with what you call wraparound services issued mostly out of the ground floor spaces that we build. So there is none at market rate BMRs. They don't have services. If they have services, they are because a gym moved into the retail spot downstairs, or a lot of these private charter preschools, I've been noticing, especially around North Beach in the financial district, I've been noticing them taking a lot of space on the ground floor of some relatively new market rate apartments. So you could say that's a service, but the building's not providing it. Whereas when we build 100% affordable housing, what we do is we take every dollar that we get in fee and we turn it into like $4, give or take, by leveraging it with tax credits and bonds. And because of that, we provide, I mean, it's an unlimited amount of services. So, you know, after school childcare, there's help with job help, you know, there's coding classes, there's a weekly food pantry, of course. We have roving UCSF and Mission Housing have a partnership where we have a roving mental health team that goes and sees patients at all of our buildings. We have monthly meetings, sometimes more than that, community meetings and other things. You know, we partner with banks and we bring in things for financial support and financial planning. And we partner with Mission graduates, and we have a, you know, program that ushers kids from grade school all the way to college and then stays with them and helps them get a job afterwards. And we partner with Mission Hiring Hall, and we, you know, ensure that those that want to can get into really good paying, you know, union trades, apprenticeship schools. And that all happens out of the ground floor of our buildings. And so, you know, that's really the main difference. And I mean, I know that we need the money. So of course I would rather that we just use the fee and built 100% affordable, but I do understand where the cries of segregation and the equity issues come. That makes a lot of sense, because it can sound like a developer just wants to cut a check, write a fee, and then be done with the pores. And, you know, that's kind of on our industry, because we need to get better at building new stuff faster, especially if that fee is cut. We need to get better at being able to build and be ready to build within a certain distance of that new construction. And I think that's an optics thing more than it is a true like segregation thing. I believe that integration and community in, you know, being involved in your community, I think it happens on the ground floor. I think it happens in the streetscapes. I think it happens at cafes, and I think it happens at nonprofits, and I think it happens in community spaces. I don't believe that it happens on the 15th floor in the Infinity Tower 2, you know? And, you know, you can say what you will about that, but the fact of it is that every unit that's built by a market rate developer, every unit that is built on site in market rate buildings, instead of a fee being cut, instead of building that unit and given to the mayor's office of housing, every unit is about 2 or 3 that we don't build, just because of how much we can leverage the money more. And so for me, I just, you know, think that at the end of the day, like, you can't live in a percentage. You can live in a house. So I would rather just focus on building as many new units as we can, not on what one project's inclusionary percentage is.
By the way, how many people do you know live in an entitlement? Okay, never mind. You don't have to answer that question. Sam, I am curious. You brought up low-income tax credits, and that's just the financial markets. So, right, there's been a lot of right tumult in the financial markets, and is that affecting kind of the financing of affordable housing projects right now?
It is, yeah. You know, it's a little bit of a zero-sum game in the sense that God, you know, I'm really, you know, thank God we passed the housing bond. And again, you know, thanks to Housing Action Coalition and YIMBY Action and all of the neighborhood clubs for supporting the housing bond. We wouldn't have done it without you. So that money's passed and that money exists. And the sad truth about affordable housing is that it takes so long to raise the money for building it that a lot of the projects in San Francisco have been like raising the money for 5 years now already. And so there were a number of Bay Area projects that have kind of snuck underneath right at the end of, you know, what some people believe is, or right at the beginning of what could be the next Great Recession. And so, you know, there are a lot of our projects are still moving forward. You combine that with the fact that we're an essential service, but yeah, you know, so like the value of the tax credits, for instance, companies not believing that they're going to be doing as much business and thus not making as much money and therefore not needing tax credits as much. That, forgive my phrase, that is a trickle down monetary loss that ends up in the affordable housing industry. And so things like that have already started. Investors that like nonprofits thought were locked up are now kind of wanting to take a step back and relook at the numbers. But thankfully, so far, the industry seems to really be working together and kind of protecting, keeping us going together. And so, it's always worrisome. The fact is that in the whole country, we've basically tied affordable housing to the economy in the sense that we've made all the funding for it essentially a tax break for really, really rich people. And bonds are great, and that is taxing housing, but like it's not like the housing hasn't quintupled in value compared to the tax. And so we are looking at what could be a really dire situation if the federal government, more than anything, but really the state of California too, like they need to get off their asses and like join the whole housing funding thing. Federal government can't claim to fund housing just because it pays for $70 billion of the mortgage interest tax deduction. I know you're a single family homeowner, Todd. I apologize, but
I have a duplex.
But like that's the truth. We spend way more money on that than all funding for affordable housing, and there is a solution. It's just spending more money on housing. And so who knows? Maybe this will be the time that politicians really do start to see how building, affordable housing, letting enough housing be built so that it can be affordable for everyone, whether it's subsidized or market rate, that it really can be like the best use of funds. And I think that people are probably willing to look at a more like long-term vantage point. The shitty part about politics is how we have to reelect everyone. A politician's job is to get reelected, right? And we have to reelect them every couple years, and it doesn't really make for. Thing about housing is it's like a 30-year investment, and like that's the opposite of how politics work. So I don't know, maybe this crisis will make people take a time out and think like, wow, maybe what could we have done better, and then do it now.
So Sam, one of the things that I have noticed, I'm very observant as the executive director, is that
Corey runs the hack, and it, bro.
Corey, right? Well, actually, have you met Kayla? Kayla's now in charge. I don't know if you have. Yeah. So one of the things that I've noticed is that affordable housing tends to be built in the eastern side of San Francisco, and I'm like, so should one presume that affordable housing isn't needed on the west side of the city? Yeah. And so I'm just kind of wondering, how did that come to pass, Sam?
Oh, it came.
By the way, you're welcome for the softball.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I told myself a lot of softball for an hour. So you come through. Julio, I told you. So yes, that's very true. It's illegal to build an apartment building right now west of Van Ness. Why is that true? Because when redlining became illegal, and we don't need to go into what redlining is. Corey will post a link to something in the notes. When redlining became illegal, we created this thing called zoning, and it does the same thing segregation-wise that redlining did. But the way that they used zoning was to only make apartment buildings and the zoning required to build apartment buildings legal in the low income, in the inner cities where redlining was red. And then they made it only legal to build a single family home, or sometimes you're allowed to have an in-law unit, as they called them back then, in the backyard. So you could have 2 units on the land, but no matter how big your lot was, right? Big enough for 50 units, but you were still only allowed to have a single family home. The entire west side of San Francisco is zoned like that. And actually, honestly, a lot of the northeast side too. And so it's not that affordable housing can't be built in the west side. It just means that to do it, you have to petition the city of San Francisco to legally rezone each lot individually. You have to spot zone. You have to get what's called you have to get a special use district passed or a conditional use permit. And when you do that, anyone with $500 can appeal your application. And so it can take years and years and years just to get the land rezoned so that you can start the years and years and years it takes to raise money. You can't start raising money until the land's zoned the correct way, right? So the reason that there's not a lot of affordable housing on the west side is that it's just so much harder to build out there. And that was by design, so that we would only build low-income net developments on the southeast side of San Francisco, so that the low-income people would conglomerate there. And that's the federal government made that rule, right? Before fair housing existed, redlining was pushed by the government and the real, like, it's not like it was this conspiracy, secret thing. And so it's been really great, again, with the efforts of the Housing Action Coalition and YIMBY Action, like, it's been really great to help push for support of building apartment buildings on the west side of San Francisco. We're leading with affordable housing because virtue trumps all. And so, and I know that comes first, and I appreciate that, but it can't just end there. The example I always like to use when I'm talking about this is the Painted Ladies are this gorgeous, iconic, whatever image of San Francisco, Full House, thank you, 90s. There's that giant, equally gorgeous white building with like marble inlay and all these things right next to it that's like 110 apartment units. It's a big 65-foot, 10,000 square foot lot, 65 feet high building. If that burned down today, it would be illegal just to rebuild it. You wouldn't be allowed to. You would have to repetition the city of San Francisco, like I said, to change the law. And so, it's perpetuated a large inequality. And I think that kind of goes back to what we're talking about with market rate developers building private BMRs on site, and how people think if you don't do that, it's segregation. And it's really because like the government, we purposefully segregated all of our low-income housing into one neighborhood. So you used to only be able to do that. And so, I think that it's all kind of goes hand in hand, but it has been really great to watch a movement grow on the west side of San Francisco. Anyone that says that San Francisco is fully built out and like there's no more room, like, Jesus, like, God help you. Like, it's not true. And you know what? There's nothing wrong with single family homes either. Like, I would never want to take that away from people. I just think that if someone wants to build a fourplex next door, that the world won't end,
Oh, it might.
It might.
So I also think that it's really important to note that this is not unique to San Francisco, right? Like that this issue is throughout the country. It's certainly in the state of California, right? Like there are areas that were very clearly, this is where the low income people are supposed to live, right? And that's a lot of what the redlining is about. Okay, I am going to get to questions from the audience. I do want to just recognize a couple of people in the audience. I understand that Lucas Ramirez, who is a city council member in Mountain View, has joined us. So Lucas, thank you for joining us. And I also saw that Noah Starr from State Treasurer Fiona Ma's office is part of the call also. So, hey Noah, good to see you. And so, thank you. All right, so just going through a couple of the questions. So shockingly, Bobak asked the first question. No surprise. So,
Okay.
So this was going back to kind of when you were talking about PPE, personal protection equipment. So, how was the process of procuring PPE been for Mission Housing? Have you run into the same sorts of difficulties that the city and state have run into with procuring similar equipment?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, we have. Earlier in the happy hour talk, I had mentioned that food pantry, for instance, which is something we take very seriously, that we do daily, if not weekly, at properties, weekly if not daily. We had to hit pause for 2 weeks. It took us about 2 weeks to get PPE for our employees to help administer food pantry correctly, to make sure that not only was it administered and that our employees were safe, but also that our tenants were safe also. So, we've been really fortunate. I'm excited. I found out, there is a really awesome organization called Mission. I'm sure we could get a link up there somewhere that Mission Housing's partnered with, and I know they've partnered with a lot of other nonprofit orgs around San Francisco. The custom Mission Housing face masks are about to hit the market, and I'll be expecting all of you to overpay for those. So, especially.
Are you working with the POA on that, Sam, or no?
Yeah, it. Yeah, I heard that the POA also had some sweet face masks. But yeah, so it was hard to get equipment. And what I think more than anything has happened is that we, especially as we partner with other nonprofits in the mission to kind of help serve the whole neighborhood, not just the people that live at our buildings. And I really do really want to commend Marcia Contreras and the Mission Housing resident community services team. Like, honestly, I don't know how we pay them or thank them for doing what they are also on the front lines, like doing food pantry and these things, and they're not being selfish about it, and they're really helping each other. And I'm in awe of what Mission Housing and Marcy and them have been able to do. I can't stress enough how cool it is and like what an honor it is to work with them. But yeah, I think one thing that it did kind of instill is probably, I know that Governor Newsom might have kind of opened things up a little bit today, but like we're not, we're still on full caution mode. We will wait to make an opinion, determination on that. Like we want to make sure that everyone is safe. And so, yeah, it was difficult to get what we needed, and we do have what we need now, but we're being as careful and economic with it as we can.
Sam, so one of the things that we at the Housing Association have been kind of talking about on a pretty regular basis as different policies are coming forward in San Francisco, just, that elections have consequences, right? In November, we have another election coming up. There's a couple of, seats where they're going to be, we don't have an incumbent running. And I'm just kind of curious, I'm not asking you to do an endorsement of anyone, but like, what do you think is the level of importance of this upcoming election in San Francisco at the supervisor level, right? Like, just to be clear, right? District 1, the current incumbent is not running, so it's an open seat, right? District 7, the incumbent is termed out, it's an open seat.
Yep.
So what would you ask people to look at from a affordable housing point of view when they're considering who to support in these elections?
I think that especially when it comes to housing, the thing that I look for the most is, I know that our supervisor districts have created 11 fiefdoms that we have 11 people believe they are the kings and queens of. But housing, I think, we just talked about building housing on the west side, market rate, affordable. These things don't happen unless our supervisors are willing to kind of set aside supervisorial prerogative and, push for housing in every neighborhood. And I'm not saying that doesn't mean each individual supervisor leads it, but, if a candidate just says that they're for 100% affordable housing and that's it, and they have no plan of how to make that happen faster, that isn't past, I'm going to run the developers out of town. If there isn't a plan for where can we build market rate housing, how do we get that done faster? If there isn't an actual plan or support for, things like the mayor and the ballot measure that would make 100% affordable housing by right and would get rid of any opposition at all. It wouldn't, as long as it was built as long as it was built to the zoning, it would be by right. Like things like that. Those are tangible things that can and should be supported. Do we support drastically increasing our affordable housing funding, right? Should we spend more than that on using DPW to sweep our streets? there's things like that that I think are real tangible. And I find that there are a lot of candidates in San Francisco, in the Bay Area, and I would say probably more and more nationally, that will tell you that they support housing. It's just that it's just going to be just this one kind of affordable housing that I'm not actually going to find any money for or help you build. But if you could figure out a way to build it and then let me make it smaller once you design it the first time, that's what they're really saying. If they don't have a plan, if they don't say more than I support housing as long as it's 100% affordable, because that's awesome, but it's not reality. And we just don't have, even if we had the funds necessary to just build 100% affordable household, we do not have the political will to allow the amount of density being built that we would need to like truly adjust climate change and truly adjust the affordable crisis. And so what a supervisor can do is just come out pro housing and say, I think we should have an apartment on that corner. And it doesn't have, it should have as much affordable housing as possible, but it doesn't have to be a perfect unicorn. Like, I think that I do like to always try to find tangible, actual projects. There are projects in District 1, there are projects in District 7 that are very much in the works right now that you can just point blank ask a candidate about. And I'm sure Corey would love to send out a newsletter listing all of those projects, as long as they're rated by the San Francisco Housing Action Coalition Project Review Committee.
Just wait until our belated April Fool's newsletter.
Yeah, that'll be in July. It'll be the 2nd. Yeah. Anyway, Sam, so Adrian Napolitano asks, what lessons in financing and building affordable housing during the Great Recession can be leveraged now?
Well, I think the lesson that, like I said, affordable housing is really a zero-sum game that requires on a ton of public funding. San Francisco had managed to siphon off the final $1 billion or so when redevelopment agencies went away in California. So the beginning of the end of the recession, but in the height of the recession. So the redevelopment agency used to provide like $1 billion a year in affordable housing dollars to San Francisco mostly, because we were the only ones that wanted to use it. Thank you, Lafayette. When Jerry Brown decided to shut down redevelopment, it was actually like 2 years or so before it happened that the affordable housing industry got wind of it, because they didn't want the money to dry up overnight. And San Francisco did manage to secure a decent amount of those funds. And because of that, they were able to fund a lot of affordable housing that never would have been built if they hadn't been prepared with the funds. And the carpenters union and the plumbers union, these unions, like half of their workforce in some cases was kept in work during the recession building affordable housing, because San Francisco managed to secure these extra funds. Valencia Gardens is one. The Hope SF projects, right? North Beach Place. These projects, these developments changed the nature of the neighborhood for better. And so I think the biggest lesson is that now more than ever, we really need to figure out a way to have the political will to demand and receive as much funding as possible. Every single emergency bill, every bill, no matter what, should have, affordable housing dollars coming to it. Like it should be everyone, because it touches every single thing. And so I think more than anything, the lesson we need to have learned is that we have to figure out a way to prioritize from a funding standpoint, because it'll get used well.
So Sam, you might have heard this guy named Milo Trouse has a question.
I hate him. I hate his sister. I hate them all.
Those Philadelphia guys, they're tough.
Can't trust me. I'm a Baltimore guy,
Do you see a bump in affordable housing production or housing in general as part of an economic recovery strategy?
I do, yeah. And for all this, for most of the same reasons that we just talked about in the last couple questions. The affordable housing industry employs construction. The New Deal, the getting us out of the Depression was literal, the public works, WPA, like this is what putting money towards affordable housing, that we are that arm nowadays. There aren't these public projects like there used to be. The only public projects are adding a lane to some highway, right? Which is great. Those are construction jobs, I guess. But so, yeah, I think that there's such a need for housing, and more the rest of the Bay Area, the rest of the country is really going to see how building mixed use affordable housing above community serving spaces helps every single person in the neighborhood and really creates a local economy. Yeah, I think that there is going to be a major role for it. And I genuinely, I truly don't believe that we will recover if it doesn't play a major role.
Sam, so we're just about at 5:25. And is there any kind of, what do you want people to know, Sam?
What do I want people to know?
I mean, why do you resemble Trotsky so much? I think I actually think the people would like to understand why that is possible.
What do I want? I want people to know that like 100% affordable housing literally makes neighborhoods safer. It like creates jobs. It boosts the economy. It's the greatest thing ever. And that like you should support it, but you should also join YIMBY Action as a member. You should get your company to join the Housing Action Coalition. None of this stuff, now more than ever, we are needing to organize. I was at a community meeting, I was at a meeting, and maybe I've been noticing we just have really been out organizing everybody, and like that's only because the people who work for and who volunteer for these orgs have the time and have the funds and the resources to live and do their job, and that job is to turn people out, and now more than ever we can't. Governor Newsom just signed a mail-in ballots for everyone. That's huge. That means that we now more than ever should get as many things on the ballot as possible. And I think that make sure you support your organizing orgs or volunteer. Sweat equity is always appreciated, because it doesn't happen in a vacuum. It takes a lot of work. And so please remember that. And thanks for joining.
Yeah. Hey, Sam. So, certainly we'll keep an eye and see if more questions come in. But one of the things that clearly is that is really apparent in this moment, right? At this time, when it's so clear that we need more funding for affordable housing, right? The production of affordable housing, it is probably, from a political point of view, one of the worst times to try to go to voters and ask for that money.
It is
right?
true.
It's like this counter, like I don't know, like this counter cyclical problem that we have. And I'm just curious, like, have you thought about, like, how do we solve for that, right? I mean, like, we have a rainy day fund in San Francisco, and quite frankly, like Supervisor Gordon Marr rated the rainy day fund at the top of when everything was phenomenal from an economic point of view. Right. And so it's kind of like, and so we have this measure that we're considering, BAFA, which would be a regional Bay Area measure that would raise money from a regional point of view to fund affordable housing. And, I haven't seen I know polling is out there, but it does seem very difficult at this moment to expect people in November to, quite frankly, have the political will to vote for a raise in taxes. They should vote for it. I'm just saying that politically it seems really, really difficult.
It does.
And I want to add, a bunch of things failed
Yeah.
this past November 2019 around the Bay Area as well.
There's been
Right, like school funding, tax. Yeah. So Sam, how do we get out of this kind of hamster wheel of, like, when we need the funding the most, we can't do it?
Right.
I'm just curious. Any thoughts?
I think it's twofold. One, I think going back to, we have to stop demonizing the fee out. We have to stop making it so that developers don't feel like they can cut a ginormous check to a city or county's affordable housing trust fund, put that money in there and let the affordable housing industry use it, right? Either you build on site or you cut your fee, like we talked about earlier. We have to stop demonizing that, because like you said, what it really does is it squanders the good times when there is funds for, these high-end luxury condos. They exist, right? I don't think every single market rate development is luxury condo, but there are a lot of that being built, especially in San Francisco, because of how expensive we've made it to build housing. And to think that all of those condos didn't, to a T, just put a bunch of money into our rainy day fund, into our coffers, that's sad. But we did pass bonds, and we do have funds. I don't think we really can go back to the voters right now and ask for more money. I think that the money exists and that it needs to start being a funding priority in budgets. And I know that means cuts other places. I'm not naive. I know that, but I just don't believe that there's another segment of a city's budget, which housing is a lot of in San Francisco, billions. I don't believe there's one that makes all the other departments run more efficiently, that like housing. And so I think instead of asking the voters for more money, and I'll support anything that does that 100%, but I think right now we need to elect people and empower people who are willing to put their budget priorities into housing. Because I do believe that a lot of the funding is there. Like, I'm sorry, it is. And there's a lot of cities around the Bay Area, there's a lot of cities around the country that don't prioritize the funding of housing. San Francisco does much better than most, but yeah, I think that's really how it's going to go.
Sam, I'm going to ask you to think for a minute about what is the thing that you're most optimistic about. And I'm going to say first what I'm most optimistic about. So yeah, I'm going to go. I'm going to say, like, look, I am constantly amazed at how fast progress is being made on the pro-housing front. It's not, I want to be clear, like, it's not fast enough, but given kind of the historical difficulties that have come along with, zoning reform and things like that, and, things that we are getting done in Sacramento, it's things that we, like 5 years ago, would have never, ever come to light. And although we've had setbacks on things like SB 50, zoning reform, like really making it so that we're making the state a place where everyone can live in a environmentally friendly manner, a social justice point of view. That progress, I sometimes say, like, we're failing at a slower rate. However, the other way of saying is that we're actually making progress there. And I think that these issues, if you just listen to public comment at City Hall, no one can stand up anymore and say, I'm anti-housing. They have to come up with some other way of framing. I support housing. I just don't think this project is right. Right? They have to start with, I support housing. Like, the advocacy that, quite frankly, UB Action has been a part of, the Housing Action Coalition, prior to me becoming the executive director, like, Tim Cullen gets a lot of credit for really, like, being a part of that effort. But, like, that is, like, there's absolute progress being made. As advocates, we are never satisfied with the speed of that, and we shouldn't be. We should constantly be pushing more and more. But I do not think it is any longer a question of, will we be successful? The answer is yes. I think it's literally a timeline, right? The question is when we are on the right side of history, right? And I do think that, and that, is it 2 years? Is it 4 years? Is it 10 years? I don't know the answer to that, but I know that, what is it, the arc of justice, or the,
yes,
bends toward whatever, you know what I'm saying, that thing, right? And so it bends slowly, right? But I think we're there. And I'm like, even with the economy kind of in the crapper right now, we're going to come out of that, and, like, we're going to be better. Like, we're going to be stronger and better, and we're going to have a more just and more racially diverse city and state, quite frankly. And I'm confident of that. I just don't know the timeline to do that. So that is what I'm optimistic about. How about you?
I have to say, like I said before, like watching the mission housing staff just like pivot on a dime, you know, like just really take stock, and like not once has it ever been we can't provide these services anymore. Not once. It's been like, when can we? How do we do this? You know, the nonprofits that we partner with, everyone, like, I have to say, and I know it's like this throughout the city in every neighborhood. I have been really touched and honored to like be loosely affiliated. It's, you know, I mean, there's a lot of people on the ground at Mission Housing, and to like see this community, you know, grow, like just band together and work together to provide the PPE and to take care of ourselves and make sure everyone has food and make sure, you know, do what we can to get people into shelter. That's been a great thing, because it will be very easy to just kind of go into your shell and, you know, not want to help anyone and just let other people do the hard work. But, you know, the Mission Housing staff, it's the opposite of that. And it's been really cool to watch. So thank you to them.
Absolutely. So I want to thank our co-host, Give Me Action, for the event this evening. I think this has been a great conversation. Sam, thank you for the work you do. Even though you're kind of a jackass, the work you do is outstanding. So good, you know, good job there. And I want to wish everyone a great weekend. Please be safe and healthy. And I hope everyone has seen the kitchen that I grew up in, because my mom has the video on there. And so, yes, I had many a bagels and cream cheese at that breakfast.
All right, everybody.
Right there.
And this is
And
David.
Mrs. Moss, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Yes.
There we go. Can we make sure somebody gets a screenshot of that? Here, I can make sure that I get it with both of you and your parents, and hopefully that notification goes away. There we go. That is beautiful right there.
All right. And remember, always support pro-housing candidates, right, Sam?
Always.
Always.
Thanks, everybody.
Cheers.
I'll call you later, Mom.